The test is over. My God, what were you thinking about? Oh, nothing. No, really. It looked like you were in a world of your own. A world of my own. Yes, a world of my own. That's it, Adam. You're suspended. Fine. Then you'll be the first to go. Say what? I said that's a lovely dress. Oh, you. Boy, what an ambitious and driven young man. I'm sure Adam will go on to do great things. We just have to cross our fingers and hope his enthusiasm doesn't directly lead to the deaths of tens of millions of people. Here's looking at you, Hong Xiuquan. Born Hong Xiuquan in 1814 in China, Hong showed an appetite for learning from a young age, so much so that his entire village helped sponsor his education. Now, to understand why this is significant, China had civil service examinations that anyone could enter, and should one do well enough, one could get a job in the government. Everybody in Hong's life thought he showed great promise. There were considerable expectations on his shoulders to do well and provide for his village. Son, what's the matter? Honestly, I'm feeling a little stressed out. Oh, you know we support you no matter what. Sure, we had to sell our house and all our belongings to fund your education, but don't you worry. There's no pressure at all. Really? Of course! Yeah, your uncle had to abandon his family and take an extra job to make more money, but there's still no pressure. What's going on? Oh, just our neighbors selling their daughters to help sponsor you. But again, no pressure. Hong took a local preliminary exam as a child and placed first, proving that his hype was by no means unfounded. Eventually, at age 13, he took the step up and attempted the imperial examination. How it worked was that he was isolated in a small room with a bed, a chamber pot, and writing equipment, and had a few days to answer all kinds of questions about Chinese literature and general knowledge. Even just one small error meant automatic failure. Long story short, Hong didn't qualify, not surprising given his age. Still, it was a disappointment. He waited a long time to attempt it again, retrying at 22 years old. The year's worth of extra study didn't bring him any more success though, as he failed once more. This crushing failure proved difficult. But third time's the charm, right? And so it was. If by charm you mean yet another failure followed by a total nervous breakdown. He was delirious for days, to the point where his family feared he might die. During his hallucinations, he dreamed he met an old man with a golden beard who gave him a sword to eradicate demons. He also spoke to a middle-aged man who gave him pointers on demon killing. Sounds like a cool idea for an anime, but this was very much real life for Hong. He was as if reborn following the dream, and took the name Hong Xiuquan. Hong stopped wasting his precious time on all that studying nonsense, working as a schoolteacher instead. He did try and fail the imperial exams one last time, however. It was around this time that his cousin noticed a book on Hong's bookshelf, a Chinese text about the fundamentals of Christianity. Hong had received it years earlier and forgotten all about it. But now, he read the book and realized it explained his visions perfectly. His dream had been of heaven, the old man had been God, and the middle-aged man was Jesus Christ. Hong realized he was the second son of God, and it was his divine mission to save China. From there on, he was a Christian. Hong wasn't about to keep his divinity all for himself. When you've realized your godliness, the only correct thing to do in that situation is start a cult. Hong did just that, yapping all about his revelations to anybody who'd listen. And surprise, surprise, it worked quite well. But I should state that Hong's version of Christianity was a little different from what you might be familiar with. Hong ignored all that kindness and humility nonsense Jesus liked to preach about. He thought the wrathful and frightening God of the Old Testament was much more suited to inspire people. During this time, the Qing dynasty ruled China. These were times of trouble. Famine, natural disasters, and economic instability ravaged the countryside. Hong and his followers weren't best pleased with this situation. Imperial China, on the other hand, was not too keen on this new religious group. They began suppressing them, and in return, Hong and his followers began plotting a rebellion. Now for a brief overview, Imperial China ruled over 400 million people in 1850, and whilst Hong's cult had grown to a sizable several thousand, that is still quite the gulf in numbers. It'd be like if all the brave citizens of Hooker, Oklahoma banded together to take on the US government. But like my pastor used to say, never underestimate the power of thousands of religious fanatics who are ready to risk their lives for their divine leader. Hong's rebels traveled through the countryside, where entire villages joined their cause. Soon, Hong crowned himself the heavenly king of great peace, the Chinese name of which gives us the name Taiping. The Taipings grew to a well-organized and disciplined army of over 1 million, in which women fought alongside men in accordance with the Taiping view that men and women were equal. Well, not exactly alongside each other. They weren't allowed contact actually, but it was still pretty progressive for the time. Of course, Hong and the other higher-ups maintained huge harems, but I can't really blame them for that. Being a cult leader needs some benefits after all. In the war with the Qing dynasty, the Taipings won many victories and captured cities and land. The Qing capital of Beijing eluded them, however. After settling down in his new capital city Nanjing, which he renamed to Tianjin, Hong began to squabble with some of his underlings. His minister of state, a man called Yang, started to have serious doubts about the holy leader, apparently getting messages from the man upstairs that he'd make a fine emperor himself. This angered Hong, who had Wei, one of his generals, murder Yang. But Hong wasn't a big believer in job security, apparently, as he had Wei killed shortly thereafter too. As the war raged on, Hong took an ever smaller role in administering his kingdom. Instead, he devoted most of his time to his two favorite activities, religion and frolicking with his harem. The tides of the war turned, and the Qing army soon besieged Tianjin. Hong's generals urged him to abandon the city, but he had a different opinion. Heavenly King, our supplies are nearly out. What can we do? Don't worry about it. God has our backs. Your Majesty, the Qing army has breached our gates. Pfft, God will save us. Touché. Even after the death of Hong Xiuquan, fighting continued for several more years. It is estimated that about 30 million people died in the Taiping Rebellion, though that number could be as high as 100 million, which would put its death toll beyond even the Second World War. The legacy of the rebellion, started by a religious nut who was upset about failing his exams, is little else than death, destruction, and famine in China for years to come. Remember to stay in school, kids, and if you don't, try to keep your death toll around 10 or lower.